My name is Jordan Calloway, and I was standing in a military courtroom staring at the man who taught me everything about power, my father. He sat at the plaintiff's table, posture locked, suit pressed so sharp it could draw blood. Beside him, Judge Harlan Cross leaned back in his chair with the easy authority of a man who already knew how things would end. Their eyes met for half a second, a silent exchange, and my stomach tightened. I had seen that look my entire life. The quiet certainty that I was already beaten. The air was cold, metallic. Every objection my attorney raised was overruled before it finished landing. Witnesses who could have cleared my name had been barred from testifying. My father didn't need to smirk. He had built the whole stage, cast every player, and written every line. I was only there to lose on cue. But I didn't spend 15 years in uniform to be told when to bow my head. When Cross moved to admit yet another unverified document into evidence, I felt the heat climb in my chest. I pushed back my chair, legs scraping against polished stone, loud enough to turn heads. My steps to the microphone were measured, each one deliberate, each one counting down the last moments of their advantage. I didn't look at my father. I didn't look at the judge. I looked straight ahead and let my voice carry to every corner of the room. Nightfall Sparrow. The words cut through the air like a blade through canvas. The gallery went still. A brigadier near the back froze, pen suspended above his notepad. Someone near the door pressed a hand to their earpiece. Across the aisle, my father's composure cracked, just barely, but enough. His smirk faltered for the first time all day. And just like that, the fight stopped belonging to them. Earlier that morning, when I first stepped into that courtroom, I already knew it wasn't built for truth. It was built for control. My attorney, Captain Dana Reeves, leaned in before the session began. They're going to block everything. Don't swing at every pitch. Wait for the one that counts. I nodded, though I could already feel the pressure gathering against my ribs. Judge Cross entered from a side door, robe hanging with practiced authority, eyes scanning the room the way a general surveys a field before ordering the advance. My father watched him the way a man watches a loyal officer who knows his job. They didn't need to speak. The alliance was visible in every shared glance, every subtle shift of posture. It began exactly as I expected. The plaintiff's counsel moved to introduce a stack of documents, and signed, unverified. Reeves objected, citing lack of foundation. Overruled. Another motion. Another overrule. It was a script, and they were reading their lines without a single stumble. I kept my hands flat on the table. In 15 years of service, I had been in rooms where a single twitch gave away your position. This was no different. They painted me as reckless, insubordinate, unfit to inherit my mother's estate. Each sentence was another twist. They circled the edges of the mission in Harith Province, what they called Operation Iron Jackal, never giving the full picture, only the version they had rehearsed for years. I could feel my father's gaze burning across the room. He didn't flinch when they called me a liability. He'd waited for someone else to say it, so he wouldn't have to. It had been 3 years since Iron Jackal, but the memory never loosened its grip. We were briefed 2 hours before sunset in a windowless room. The objective was clean on paper: extract a humanitarian doctor and 2 local aides from a breakaway cell. Satellite imagery showed a warehouse on the edge of the river district. The intel was neat. Too neat. I caught it immediately. 2 timestamps that didn't match the weather logs. Thermal signatures that looked borrowed from a training simulation. A delivery vehicle parked at an entrance that didn't exist in the overhead photos. I raised my concerns. Requested a second human source to confirm. The request was denied. We launched at dusk. My team of 6 moved like clockwork. Each step rehearsed, each person exactly where they needed to be. The first door was unlocked. The second swung open without resistance. My gut clenched. The blast came from the wrong quadrant. A shaped charge inside a support pillar turned concrete into shrapnel. Torres went down first, then Malik. The upper level erupted with fire from positions we'd never been briefed on. I called the abort, shifting to a fallback route I had mapped the night before. But every move cost us another person. By the time I dragged Phelps through the drainage cut, my left palm was split open, glass embedded deep. I still feel that scar every time I make a fist. The official report called it a tragic miscalculation. They buried the anomalies, erased the pre-mission requests I had submitted. When the families asked what happened, they were given a version that left no room for doubt, except about me. In that courtroom, with my father staring holes through me, I knew Iron Jackal wasn't over. And Nightfall Sparrow was the thread that could unravel everything. The prosecution had just finished parading another expert who had never set foot in Harith Province when Cross leaned forward, pen tapping the bench. "Commander Calloway," he said, drawing the title out slowly, "your record speaks for itself, and frankly, it isn't flattering. I didn't rise to the bait. The trick in combat and in court is the same. Don't give the enemy the reaction they're hunting for." He motioned for an excerpt to be read, an unsigned memo describing me as emotionally compromised and reckless. Reeves objected. Was overruled. The rhythm was as predictable as the clock on the wall. I glanced at my father. The corner of his mouth twitched, the faintest shadow of a smile. He believed the case was locked. The outcome inevitable. That was the moment I decided it was time. I pushed back my chair. Every head in the gallery turned. My steps to the lectern were slow, measured. Years of tactical debriefs teaching me that silence before you speak can be more dangerous than the words themselves. I rested my hands on the wood. The scar on my left palm caught the light. Nightfall Sparrow. The air left the room. The brigadier in the back straightened, pen frozen. A civilian near the aisle pocketed his phone, without looking at it. The young intelligence officer, who had been writing furiously, stopped writing entirely. My father's jaw tightened. His fingers flexed against the armrest like a man suddenly unsure of the ground beneath him. Cross blinked. "What did you just say?" I repeated it. And then the storm moved. Cross's knuckles whitened around the gavel, but he didn't strike it. His eyes darted to my father, a flicker of unspoken calculation passing between them. From the gallery, movement rippled outward. The brigadier stood, murmuring into a secure handset. Two figures in suits exited through the side door, one flashing credentials I hadn't seen in years. "This tribunal will recess for 60 minutes. The words were tight, almost reluctant. The gavel came down, not as a declaration, but as an escape. When the hall cleared, my father crossed the aisle faster than I expected. "What did you just do?" His voice was low, taut. "By the time you figure it out," I said, keeping my tone level, "it'll be too late." He looked toward the chamber doors where Cross still hadn't reappeared. Something new crossed his face. Not anger. Doubt. When the tribunal reconvened, it wasn't Judge Cross who stepped through the side door. It was Admiral Claire Mercer, uniform immaculate, presence filling the room before she reached the bench. The murmuring in the gallery died instantly. She stood for a moment before sitting. "The record will reflect that I am presiding under delegated authority from the office of the Secretary of the Navy and the Joint Chiefs." My father shifted. He had played enough political chess to recognize when the rules had changed, and when he was no longer the one writing them. "This matter is dissolved in its current form," Mercer said. "All filings associated with Docket 1843 are now classified." Two security officers moved down the aisles, collecting documents from every table and row. The intelligence officer-eyed clocked earlier stepped forward to assist, calm, precise, surgical. "The court recognizes that actions taken by Commander Calloway during Operation Iron Jackal were consistent with standing rules of engagement and mission authority. Effective immediately, contested assets are to be released to the beneficiary named in the will of Margaret Calloway." Hearing my mother's name spoken in that room was like sunlight after weeks of cold. I kept my face steady, but inside, the coil I had been carrying for 3 years began, slowly, to loosen. My father inhaled sharply, as if to argue, caught Mercer's eye, and thought better of it. "This session is concluded under seal." He caught me in the corridor before I reached the secured wing. "You think this is over?" "No," I said. "It's just begun. You could have handled this quietly, like family." I took a step toward him. "Family ended when you signed your name to their silence. When you traded my reputation for whatever they promised you." For the first time all day, he looked away. "They said if I stayed quiet, you'd keep your commission, your pension, that I was protecting you." "You weren't protecting me," I said flatly. "You were protecting yourself. I buried 4 people because someone fed us lies, and you helped make sure those lies stayed clean." He didn't speak. The corridor noise seemed to fall away, leaving only the two of us, locked in a quiet war neither of us had words left for. I let the silence hold. Then I stepped back. I'm done explaining myself to you. I turned and walked through the secure door, the scar in my palm warm against the papers I carried. Admiral Mercer was waiting in a small conference room, blinds drawn, coffee gone cold on the table.
Seat, Commander.
I closed the door and took the chair across from her.
You shook the right tree today, she said.
Now we see what falls out. She didn't waste breath after that. Intelligence had been manipulated. Satellite imagery altered. Human sources suppressed. A false positive fed deliberately into the pipeline. The compartment that ran it had been dissolved 6 months after Iron Jackal, but the architect, the person who designed it, was still active. I have the authority to form a task unit, she said. Off the books. Fully sanctioned. I want you to lead it. You choose the roster. You set the tempo.
No middlemen, I said.
I answer directly to you. Agreed. And my people full benefits. Families, education, medical.
No lo protes.
The corner of her mouth lifted. You don't start small, do you? Not when it matters. She slid a sealed folder across the table. Preliminary intel. Burn after reading. I placed my hand on it. This isn't about getting my record back, is it?
No, she said.
It's about making sure no one else buries their team because someone needed a win on paper. I picked up the folder and stood. If Iron Jackal had been the ambush, this was the counterattack. And I was done waiting. A week later, we met in a secure facility, the kind where signals die before you cross the threshold. I set a small metal tag on the table, a name etched into the steel. Sentinel Shade. We keep watch for the ones who can't. When the first mission file slid across the table, the patterns were all too familiar. Same fingerprints. Same architecture. Same arrogance. Daring us to follow. I pressed my thumb into the scar on my left palm, a reminder of where this started and why it could never happen again. Justice hadn't ended in that courtroom. It had only just found its footing.